Welcome to the Leading Generations podcast from Antioch Bible Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri. Each week, the podcast focuses on helping our church family live out its mission of leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Leading Generation podcast. I hope your week is going well. It's so good to just gather with you every week and be able to chat with you and share our heart, especially as we're going through this year, spiritual disciplines, looking at different ways that we can grow our relationship with God, ways that we can grow in becoming more like Christ. And so this month, we've been looking at worship. We've looked at it through the lens of Scripture. We've looked at it thinking through our family life. And today, we're going to be looking at it through the lens of culture. So before we do that, Andrew, I wanted to just, again, sort of recap our last two episodes to get, if somebody hasn't watched those, they can be, or listen to them, they can get caught up with us. So let's talk a little bit about the key verse that we're thinking through when it comes to worship, and then how we're defining worship, and then maybe a quick high-level recap of the family, and then we'll get to culture.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we've said, we kind of had a few kind of working definitions of worship, but what we landed on is worship is focus on God and response to God. And that comes from, you mentioned Louis Giglio says that response to God, worship is response to God for who he is and what he's done. And then Dr. Whitney in his book really talks about worship being ascribing to God the praise and the worth that he's due for who he is. So kind of summarizing that for our purposes in this idea of focusing on God and responding to God, which is similar to how Pastor Clint defines it for us for our worship ministry as well. And then what we're kind of using as our key verse to think through it is John 4:23-24, that says, "The hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." So if you're listening, you can go back and listen to us kind of talk through that, what it means to worship in spirit and truth. And then for last week's episode, talking about family and the practical side of things, we kind of focused in on this identity where Jesus refers to us as worshipers. And that's kind of supposed to be our identity and who we are. And we talked through some of the practical side of how we do it, what that looks like, how we turn our focus to God, and then what it looks like for us to respond to that. So when we think about the culture now and today, we want to look at how we as a church, and then we as believers, as followers of Christ, are different, how we stand out, how we're countercultural when we're committed to this spiritual discipline of worship.
Yeah. And, I think we have to understand that everybody we encounter is a worshiper, right? Because God created us to worship. So when we think about it in terms of culture, it's not like Christians worship and non-Christians don't worship. No, we all worship something or someone. Now, Christian worship is because we're responding to who God is and what he's done for us. As you said at the last episode at the end, like he's saved us, right? He's taken us from being children of wrath to children of God. He's taken us from darkness to light. Like that is, we can't help but respond to him in worship. So I think it's good to sort of start with that baseline of everyone we encounter in culture is worshiping something. And so I like that we think of it that way. So as we're talking about it, we can see the contrast between worships. So you have the way we worship as Christians, you have the way people worship who don't follow Jesus. So what are some of the ways that we see this sort of non-Christian, and even Christians can fall in this, but what are some ways that we see in our culture that people worship?
Yeah, so there's three areas that I thought of, three isms, and so these are, you may or may not be familiar with these terms, but I thought of consumerism, which is just this idea of life is about acquiring things. It's about the experience. It's about enjoying physical things. So consumerism,
which is huge. In our
it's big
culture. Like everything is geared to consume. I mean, you think even beyond stuff, right? Like you get to social media, that the danger of that is just I'm consuming, right? Like I'm just consuming content.
So consumerism. I also thought of expressive individualism, which is just kind of the term for this whole like follow your heart movement in the culture. Be true to yourself. You define your own truth. What's true for you is true for you. This whole, just kind of this, almost like the Disney, like follow your heart type of mentality that the culture has.
Yeah, we see that all over our culture and sexual identity, you know, those kind of things where it's just this, you be you and right. It's not, I think it goes against totally John chapter 4, true worshipers worship the Father in spirit and in truth, right? Like it's the focus of that is on yourself and
Yeah. And so then the third one that I thought of is secularism. And really, when I say secularism, it's this idea in the culture that if you put your faith in God, if you are a person of faith, that's a private faith and even an optional faith. So there's no real commitment level. But then also secularism has this idea of meaning. Something being meaningful is created. So we have the ability in and of ourselves to ascribe meaning to something. Things don't inherently have meaning and significance. So we kind of get to decide this is important, this is not important, this is meaningful, this is not meaningful, which gets into the whole, goes all the way to the pro-life movement, to anything in the culture of some. In secularism, we think that we have the authority and the power to say what has meaning, what has significance, and what doesn't.
Sure. So the three that we see in culture: consumerism, expressive individualism, secularism. I don't know how that came across, but secularism. Those three things we see it a lot in our culture of, again, ways that people are worshiping through consuming, through expressing themselves. It's like, I'm going to be true to myself. I'm following my heart. And then that idea of secularism, of meaning, is being created. So we see that in the world. How does true worship contradict those things?
Yeah. So I think, it obviously completely reframes them and forces, in a lot of ways, us as followers of Christ to think about them completely differently. But we think of consumerism. So consumerism really ultimately asks the question, do I like it? Did I enjoy it? Did it accomplish something for me? So consumerism asks, did I like it? I think worship asks the question, was God honored? Did God receive glory from this thing? Whether I liked it or not, you mentioned Job. So does God receive glory for this? Where consumerism is really, did I enjoy it? Did I like it? Did it help me?
Yeah, man, that is counterculture, right? To ask that question, was God honored, rather than did I like it? But what is the difference between those two questions? The focus, right? One is focused on it's focused on me, and the worship ask, was God honored? It's focused on God, right? Like it's leading us back to our definition of focus and response to God. And again, in the church, we've got to be careful that that's how we think about everything we do, right? Did I like it? So come on Sunday morning and it's like, did I like the music? Did I like the preaching? Well, probably not, but like you come back because you have to. But you know what I'm saying there? Like we walk in, it's like, do I like the coffee? Right? I think going to an Antioch group or student ministry, those are questions as we're raising our kids through kids ministry and student ministry. Is, my kids' natural inclination is to think, if I don't like it, I don't want to do it, right? Rather than thinking about not consumerism, but worship. Was God honored? Like, so when I go to student ministry and I sit in the groups and I'm talking with, even if it's just one other person's there on that day, was God honored through that, as opposed to the whole group being there? Yeah. Like, I think it just reframes. I think that's a good word, but we got to be careful not to allow that consumerism to creep into the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's such a danger, and such an easy thing to have happen. And I think, I think whenever I think of it, it's like, man, the glory and honor of the Lord is not concerned with your preferences.
Right.
The Lord is a jealous God for his glory and for his honor. Yeah. And it's less about, you're not called as a church member, as a follower of Christ, to see that your preferences are done in the church, but you're called to see that God is glorified through the church. Yeah. And that's oftentimes going to look like you seeking the betterment of the church or the betterment of others and the glory of God, rather than, I really wish that we had a espresso machine in the cafe.
Sure.
So,
yes.
It's going to just look different.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine if every Sunday, every person that walked into Antioch Bible Baptist Church wasn't walking in, and I'm not saying
sure,
like everybody's this way, but what if we walked in the church not thinking, I wonder if I'm going to like the music today. I wonder if they're going to be nice to me today, right? And we all walked in with, I want to honor the Lord today through the way that I treat people. I want to honor the Lord as I drink that cup of coffee and have fellowship with someone. When I go in, I'm not really concerned with what songs we're singing. I mean, I think we need to be, sing songs that honor the Lord, but I'm going to sing because I want to honor the Lord. I'm going to listen to that message because I want to honor the Lord. Imagine just the difference, what it could create in our Sunday morning experience together as a church family if we all had that mentality. Like, it's not about me. This is all about the Lord. And we come in with that mentality. This is where I think it gets into being counterculture, is because if we're all walking in, which is what we should do on Sundays, and our focus is on the Lord when we're gathering together, we're singing like it doesn't matter who's watching us, right? Like, because we're worshiping the Lord together. We're listening to the messages with intentionality. We're loving on people in the hallways because we want to honor the Lord. I think if an unsaved person walked into that gathering, it's like, man, there's something different here. These people aren't worshiping themselves. They don't got their arms crossed because the guitar's too loud on this Sunday, or the drums were too loud, or whatever it may be. Yeah. Like, they're there to worship the Lord. I would think that's a bit attractive. Yeah. Because it takes the pressure off of being, it's all about them. And it's like, man, this is sort of refreshing to be around a group of people that it's not all about them. It's about the Lord, and they just want to honor the Lord with their life.
Yeah. So, and I think it's such a challenge for parents too, like thinking of being countercultural, like everything about the lives of your kids, especially if you have students and teenagers, but even, I have younger kids and it's still the same, but there's so much about the culture that tells them you need to have this idea of consumer. Like, you need even the rest of these that we'll talk through really quickly in a second, but this is what the culture is telling them. And so then when we as parents say, we're going to church to glorify the Lord, and it's not about you, like, within reason, obviously, it's like, hey, to my daughter, it's like, she loves her class. She loves her teachers. Right, they're fantastic. But if she were to say, hey, I don't like my class at church, it's like, well, I'm sorry, but that's not really the point. That's not why we go to church.
Right.
Is to, we don't go to church to necessarily just to have fun and be with our friends and have playtime,
Right.
And watch VeggieTales. We go to church to learn about Jesus and to give God honor and worship.
Yep.
That's why we go. And so I just think that's a unique challenge to parents, especially when the culture has such an influence on our kids.
And I think the older your kids get, right, and again, I've experienced this. Kids get to teenage years, and they're all going to go through this. I've rarely met a student that didn't go through a moment they didn't like youth group, right? Doesn't matter how amazing the youth group is, but there's a moment where it's like they're not going to like the guys or girls that are in their group. They're not going to like their leader. They're not going to like the student pastor. Nothing against Tim here or anything like that, because I was the student pastor and people didn't like me, right? Like, that's just part of being the leader. Like, you're going to make a decision that they don't care for. If you're a consumer, if you're living that life, then you don't have to go, right? Yeah, like, it's okay. You can skip. You can, you can just come to big church with me, kind of thing. Well, then I think that's a slippery slope of, before you know it, they're off to college and they're not going to church. They're not involved in those things, and maybe that could be traced back to this idea of it was about them. It was consumerism rather than I'm doing this to honor the Lord, whether I necessarily like it or not. I want to be there to honor the Lord and worship him, because we've been called to do that. Obviously, Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 and 24, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as is the habit of some, right? But gather together to grow each other, to spur each other to love and to good work. So I think it's important that we help our families. And again, this is so counterculture, because again, so much of what we're told is it's all about you. And if you don't like it, then go somewhere else or do something different. Where gathering to worship publicly on a Sunday and making it about the Lord, that just sets us apart from culture. But we also, I know we've talked a lot about the church, but I think practically even living that out on a day-to-day basis, that life's not about you. Life is about, am I honoring the Lord today? So whether that means you get a huge tax return, right? Or it means you got to pay a huge tax bill here in April. Like, I'm going to honor the Lord. I want him to be honored in the good, the bad, the difficult, the easy, right? Like, we want to live a life that it's honoring to the Lord. It's not about me and what I can consume. It's about honoring him with my life. So that's consumerism. Let's go to, again, expressive individualism. So how does culture, how does true worship in spirit and truth, reshape how we think about this idea of expressive individualism?
Yeah, so this really, in the culture, really puts us at the center. Is the idea. It's this, follow your heart, be true to yourself, define your own truth. And so really it's focusing, again, on what we want and focusing on ourselves. We're kind of at the center of our own universe to decide things, but worship puts God at the center of that. So again, it kind of goes back to this idea of it's not about me, it's about God. We're not the center of the universe. God is the center, and he's the one who kind of drives what we're thinking, what we're doing.
Yeah. I think a good way, as you said it, to see the difference between those two is it's not about me, it's about God. So it doesn't matter what I feel, it doesn't matter even really what I think or what people tell me. What matters most is, what does God have to say? Because he's the center of my life. That's in the New Testament and Old Testament as well. You have this term Lord, and the idea of, more so in the New Testament, is that he's the ruler, he's the king of your life. So the first episode we talked about, you mentioned Thomas's response, my Lord and my God. When he says my Lord there, he's saying, you're the ruler, you're the king of my life. He's saying to him, you're the center of my life. And again, that totally goes against expressive individualism.
Yeah.
For me to say that God's the center of my life is very different than what our students are told, what we're told. Again, you be you, follow your heart, all those kind of catchy terms totally goes against what true worship looks like, because true worship is God is the center. I want to conform my life to the image of God. I want to become more like him, Romans 8:29. And so that's going to go a little bit against that individualism of following my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the last one we mentioned was secularism, which really is this idea that meaning is created, not received. And in my mind, this is the main cultural point that comes from that worshiping God in spirit and truth. This is that truth aspect of, in the culture, we kind of make our own truth. We get to decide what has meaning. We get to decide what's important. But true worship says God gets to decide that. And we're driven to worship because we see God's working and how his attributes, how he's designed things, like all of that leads us to worship. So we see the meaning and the purpose of things around us and our own lives coming from God and his truth and the truth of Scripture, rather than kind of defining that for ourselves and ascribing truth ourselves in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of a couple of scriptures, like Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 and 17, that idea of it all coming from God, right? Like he says, for everything was created by him in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things hold together, right? That's what you're saying there. Like, that's not us saying, here's the meaning of life. That is God saying, here is the meaning of life. And it's me, because I've created everything, and I hold everything together, and it's all there for me, which I think that's a really neat thing to think about, is that when we worship God, when we focus on God and we respond to God for who he is, like we're actually being who we were created to be.
Yeah.
Like that's an amazing thought. And again, totally counterculture, as opposed to you create meaning for yourself, but really you're being who God's made you to be, which again, worship is our identity. It's everything that we are.
Yeah.
That is amazing to me, that actually when I'm worshiping God and I see that it's all about him, it's all for him, I'm actually being who Genesis chapter 1, God made man to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
It's the new creation, right? The old has passed away, the new has come. New creation it's all about the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the, I mean, you read again, the end game in Revelation, and it's all about him. Like there's no sun in the new heavens and the new earth, because God his glory is shining.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately, going to be our reality. And so I think when we think about worship for us, it's getting ready for that. It's looking to that and saying, man, I want that to be true of my life now.
Yeah, because I think if you can live life today and say, man, got nice house and cars and family and all of this stuff, and life's good, but that doesn't lead you to worship the Lord, to say, man, this is all about you. I think heaven's going to be a pretty miserable place for you, because it's disconnected from the one that what we're headed for, right? Like, I think it was John Piper I watched. He had a little clip one time where it was like, if you could have a nice house and your family, all this stuff, and not have Jesus, would you be okay with that? And he's like, well, that's hell. That's not heaven.
Yeah.
Because heaven it's all focused on the glory of God. It's all focused on Jesus. And so I think that is just a good thought to be reminded of, man, that's where it's all heading to with Revelation. That's what heaven is going to be, is worshiping the Lord in spirit and in truth. And our faith at that moment will become sight. So let's start living that way now, right? Let's begin to live as a church family. And again, this is going to be counterculture, but let's live with eternity in view. And having eternity in view is we're focused on God and we're responding to God. And that's what every day of our life looks like, is I want to focus on him and I want to respond to who he is.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about all of that, I think one of the biggest ways that we as followers of Christ are countercultural is with our Sunday morning worship services, right? So let's take the last, 5 minutes or so here and talk about corporate worship and how that's countercultural. I've heard people say that churches are wartime outposts for God in the culture. Yeah. So when we think about being countercultural, a big thing that makes zero sense to the secular culture is that we gather every week on Sunday mornings with the goal of worshiping the Lord through the reading of the word, through prayer, and through singing, and through fellowship and other ways. So what about, let's talk about that aspect of worship.
Well, I think the heart of corporate gathering is the focus is on God, not on us, right? Like that is what sets apart us gathering every week. I mean, again, thinking true worshipers worship me in spirit and in truth. So truth, scripture tells us we should gather together, right? Like that's not an optional kind of thing in the believer's life of, people who say they're a Christian, but they're not connected to a church. I've got a lot of questions for you, because God's called us to gather as believers and worship him. And so I think that's how it's counterculture. And when we think about the things that we do, that God calls us to do, like baptism, who's that focused on? It's focused on the Lord, right? Like think about communion. Who's that focused on? It's focused on Jesus and his blood that was shed and his body that was broken for us. When we sing, I love Clint's philosophy of the songs that we sing is that they're focused on God, right? They're biblical is what he wants the songs to be, but then they're also corporate singing in nature, so that they're easy for us to sing together as a church. So I love Clint's focus there, because it is focused on, we want it to be in truth, but we also want it to be something that we can do together as a church family, that it's easy to sing. And then as we preach the word, the part of the reason we do exegetical messages or verse by verse messages is because the focus is not on us. The focus is on the Lord. And so we're just going to take his word and we're going to go verse by verse through that. And so I think this is the importance of corporate worship, is it helps us take our focus in a culture that's constantly saying, focus on you be you, follow your heart, to gather with a group of people where the focus is on the Lord, and we're encouraging each other to turn our focus to the Lord, to respond to him for who he is. I think we need that, again, based off the word of God in our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And church family, as you're listening, I would just encourage you to remember some of our past conversations. I think corporate worship comes out of a heart for Christ and a heart for Jesus and a heart for worship in our own personal lives. I think, just as we close, I think of Jesus' words in Matthew 15, 8 and 9. He's quoting Isaiah, and he says, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So we at Antioch don't want to worship in vain. We want to worship with hearts that are focused on God and hearts that are responding to God here at Antioch. And we want to help you as church members here at Antioch to do that in your personal lives as well. So thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. We hope that this small series on the spiritual discipline of worship has been a blessing and an encouragement and a challenge even to you to live lives that are focused on God and responding to God in worship. We'll see you next time on the Leading Generations podcast.